Alright, all you graveyard shift racers out there, welcome back to Under the Radar. And this week's Stunts of the Week goes to none other than Vinewood on Fire with their stunt Extreme Salem, but also goes to none other than Explosive Jump by Joe Cook M. And the reason why we picked these two stunts? Well, first of all, anybody who can fly upside down in rush hour traffic has to be extremely talented or extremely insane, and I got a feeling Vinewood on Fire fits both of those marks to a T. And the reason why we picked the other stunt? One, because it involves explosions. Two, because she overjumped the ramp and was still able to land the stunt like nothing ever happened, which is aces and crazy in our book. And speaking of people who are absolutely crazy, folks, I think it's time for us to get ready to rev our engines and see who was the best of the best for this month of Extreme, as we get ready to go into a very extreme month-ending edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Month. And the first track that we have up comes from the creator Genopia with his said track G Ruiner Drive and Fly. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this track for the elite list of this extreme month is not only because it gives you a chance to ride the car from Knight Rider, aka Kit, up the side of Mount Chiliad, but it also involves you in a makeshift flying race as well the second you hit near the finish line. And the only tip of advice, like we said before, folks, make sure you time your parachute jumps carefully once you jump off the top of that mountain. Because if you don't, you only get one shot if you're in first place. Unless everybody else fails behind you, yeah, you will end up losing this race if you don't hit the mark to the exact point. So make sure you time your parachute jumps wisely. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Cambo20 with his said track C20 Simplified Stunt. And the reason why in the world this track made it in for the tracks of the month, not only because, like it says in the name, it's a very simple stunt, but also because you get a chance to use sports classic, muscle, sports, and supercars during this said race, and every single one of them can successfully make it over this giant oversized loop, or in the loop that's bigger than all hell, even though it's a simple loop. And the only tip of advice we have for you fans out there for this said loop is to stay centered. And if you try to take on your opponent inside of this loop, make sure you have command of the middle of the loop. Because if you don't, and you go a little bit too far to the right or to the left, let's just say you're getting slung out of that said loop like a quarter outside of a washing machine that got left open. So remember at home, folks, stay centered. The best advice that I could give you, or a monk could give you while you try to meditate. And besides meditation practices you'll need after trying to take on these said tracks, the next track that we have up that made it into this elite list for this month comes from the creator Spitfire 2205 with his said track Rapid Vapid Rally. And the reason why in the world this track made it in for the tracks of the month for this month, not only because it gives you a chance to race in trophy and desert raid trucks in a track that'll definitely test the waterlogging of their said trucks, but also because it can double over as a makeshift car wash, which isn't that bad. And the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there for this said track is to make sure you pick a car that is big enough and fast enough to not only handle the jumps, but to also handle the chances of your car getting bogged down during these said races. And what I mean by bogged down, well, let's just say if your car's not tall enough to go over the water, your car engine will most likely die on you. So make sure you pick a car that is big enough and fast enough to use during this said crazy off-road into the water-like track. And the next track that we have up, speaking of going into the water, comes from the creator Hajaro Tajo with their said track, Kara e Kara Megalodon. And the reason why in the world this track made it in for the tracks of the month, well, not only because it gives you a chance to get up close and personal with a giant oversized shark, but it also gives you a chance to test out some very interesting vehicles in the middle of the ocean during low tide. And as a little bit of a warning for you race fans out there, make sure if you're crazy enough to take that ramp, that your car can handle the jump going over that said ramp for this said track. And what do I mean by that, folks? Well, remember what I said about low tide? Let's just say it will affect your chances of winning this race magnificently. The best word I can use to describe it. And if you're not careful, you will fall into the middle of this track and you will get lapped, which will cause you to lose this race. Especially the part where you have to use the festival bus to actually make your way from one side of this big sea plank to the next. And yeah, as a bit of a warning, if you come across anybody with that bus, if your car can make that jump, take the jump. You know, just the only tip of advice we have for you for this said dangerous track. And the last but not least track to make it in for this elite list for the month comes from the creator Warlord Wedgie Woo with his said track WEG Aztec Architect GP. And the reason why in the world this said track made it in for this month, not only because it reminded me of a classic track from a Mario Kart long ago, but also because how intricate this track truly is. And also, secretly, the 9-year-old in me loved this track because it reminded me of one of those little push tracks that I had when I was a kid. You know, the one with the remote control and it goes around in a figure 8? Yeah, this reminds me of that. And the only tip of advice we have for you fans out there is watch out for falling cars. The only tip of advice we have for you, and also beware of hairpin turns during the said track. Cause if somebody tries to take out another car, they will fall on top of yours. And the hairpin turn advice? Well, let's just say there's not many barricades during this said track, and there's a high possibility you can fall to the city streets below. So be careful. And, you know, have fun during this track as well, along with the other ones that we mentioned for this month. And with that said, folks, wraps it up for another extreme monthly edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Month. And I guess with that said, we might as well head back to this music one more time. And when we return, we'll be back with the final segment for Under the Radar for this month, right after this. So don't get lost in the madness just yet, folks, and stay tuned.